caffeine.
Oh, that's good.
Are we live, Kathy?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. 6:59 and holding. I will call this regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Mr. Haynes, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes, sir.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing, please. Thank you. Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for what we believe will be a week full of promise. Please lead us in your ways and fill our hearts with faith, hope, love, and charity. Help us to see others as you see them. Lord, guide our decisions, guide our responses, and guide our conversations. We ask for all this tonight in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Kathy, roll, please.
Carter. Here. Walther.
Here.
Epperson.
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Hampshire. Here. Gaelic.
Here.
Lee.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum present. Mr. Barstow, do you have something for me tonight? Are we adding something to the agenda? Aren't we adding something to the agenda? Executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
all right.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to motion to amend the agenda to add an executive session pursuant to Revised Code Section 121.22G8 to discuss information which is directly related to a request for economic development assistance that is to be provided or administered under Revised Code Section 3737.67 to Revised Code Section 3735.70, and wherein council believes it is necessary to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project. And Mr. Mayor, that, I believe that may be already be on this agenda, but no, that would go in at, would be 9D, or in between 9 and 10
Yep.
on the agenda.
Do we
Before
usually do
additional
citizens' comments and then go into executive?
Yes.
session?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
thank you, between,
Yeah.
after 10, but before 11,
Yep.
10A.
10A.
Inviting into
We'll just call it
Invited
10A.
into
That'll
that,
be the motion.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that now.
we'll do it on the motion, but there will be people invited in,
Okay.
other than just council.
Got a motion to amend the agenda. Need a second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion? And roll, please.
Walther.
Yes.
Epperson.
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hampshire. Yes. Gaelic.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Carter. Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We'll have an executive session under 10A. All right, citizens' comments. Scott, is there anybody out there that, on the clipboard that has signed up besides Kip?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think we were gonna try to get, Mrs. Figgins introduced to everybody before we started the round
We're gonna
robin.
do Mary Ann, and we're also gonna do Mr. Platt. That way, then we can move into regular business. So, Chris, if you'd like to bring in Mary Ann, that'd be great. But if you check the clipboard just to see if, oh, you don't have?
Maybe it's outside.
Okay.
It is. It is outside.
Okay. We have the introduction of a new employee tonight, so that's gonna take place first.
Just wanted to take a second to introduce our new treatment plant superintendent, Mary Ann Figgins, to the council, everybody. She comes to us from Utica. She's got a lot of experience running treatment plants, reporting to the EPA, everything that we need her to do. She's been here since May 11th and is fitting in great with the team. She's good personality-wise and she's good knowledge-wise. So I'm very happy that she wanted to come join our team. So
Great.
just want to take a second, put a face with the name. if you wanted to say anything.
Congratulations, yeah.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here. I'm very happy. I've been doing this since 1993. Started this when I was in high school and just kind of went with it. And what I do, what I love, being part of the helping the environment.
Very good.
And I'm looking forward to bringing some stuff in and getting to learn all about this place.
Great. Do you live in Utica?
I live outside, right outside of Utica, Martinsburg side.
Very good.
I have 2 boys. My husband is in the business too. He works for the Village of Hebron as the water superintendent. And I'd like to invite any of you out for a tour if you ever want to come.
Awesome.
It is fun. Tours are fun.
Yep. Hint, hint to our new councilman.
Yep.
You can learn the basics by going to some of our water plants and seeing how it happens, so, very good.
You got a good pilot product. Can't go wrong.
Right,
Awesome.
yes.
Yes. Really good right now.
Fill your trunk with product for free.
Welcome, Mary Ann.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Yep.
Thanks, Marion. Appreciate it.
Well done.
Mr. Platt, please. Yes, sir. Chris, I just have a quick question, and how far up is she on her licenses and all that good stuff?
She's got a 3 in wastewater and a 1 in water, and she has already signed up to, which is everything that we need. She's already signed up to get a 2 in water. She wants to go dual 3s and farther.
Very good, thank
Very
you.
good.
Mr. Platt, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Name and address, please, for the record.
Rob Platt, 371 Woodside Drive, here in the city of Pataskala. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the time this evening. Here to give an update to the Water and Sewer District as you're kind of getting back to somewhat normal meeting operations here. You've heard me talk before about the concentrate force main project that we've got going on. That is to take the concentrated waste from the new water treatment plant, the RO plant that was built, straight to the wastewater treatment plant, bypassing a couple pump stations, therefore saving electricity costs, additional capacity that has increased. So that project is in hydrostatic pressure testing right now. So that'll be finishing up soon. The board approved the general manager, the acting general manager, to put out RFQs for a Summit Road force main project. This is something that just recently happened. This will be a 10-inch addition between Broad Street headed south. We have some capacity issues there on the sanitary line, so this will free that up significantly to the tune of about 350,000 gallons a day off the flow of the existing 12-inch gravity. In the end, that frees up some capacity there for growth for you all on the west side of Pataskala. So kind of meets 2 needs and goals there. Our general manager is also evaluating and cleaning and video inspection projects for the Taylor Road East Broad Street area to limit inflow and infiltration. It's part of the inflow infiltration program that we've got going on to eliminate groundwater entering into the sanitary sewer system. In addition to that, the one thing I'm excited to bring to you this evening, and I'm glad the timing fell the way it is because the board just met this last Thursday. As you all know, we've been in talks for quite some time, at least since November when I joined the board, to try to find a solution to the sanitary sewer issue at the GRS site. And I wish I could tell you right this minute we have that solution. We don't, but I think we've definitely headed in the right direction. We've district representatives, myself, Mr. Gilcher, have met with a number of you from the city over the time. Certainly thankful to Mr. Chirac, Mr. Walther, Mr. Hicken, and Mr. Epperson. They put in a lot of effort in that over the time here. Where we've kind of got to, as you all know, there's, and Councilman Lee will recall this, he asked me about this when I interviewed back in October. How do you find a solution to the JRS site? There are so many different layers of things going on there, as you all know. There's multiple TIFs in play, there's a CRA, there's a JED, there's agreements, development agreements, school agreements, there's all these things that are layered together. And the simple solution historically or traditionally is, well, you put the utilities in as the development comes, or as there's a funding mechanism in place, whether it's a TIF or some way to bond the project through revenue, and we just simply don't have that. For 10 years now, that I can think of, after that JRS grant went in, the county helped put that in. There's been debt incurred on it from the original balance of what was granted from the JRS program to what it actually costs. There was the water line put in. 2 lanes of the originally planned 4 lanes were put in. All those things happened back then, and then we've kind of just tried to muddle our way through and figure out, try to have somebody bring a solution to us to try to figure it out. So what has been going on recently is an active, very active, trying to seek out that solution. The district has an interest in getting sanitary sewer service there to make it actually developable. We all know there's a little bit of sanitary there, but it's not really sufficient, and the city has a need to see that develop also. So what we proposed at the last meeting was, the one true way to make this happen is to free up the revenue streams. It's to identify what all is there. As we sat around the table, I don't know that any of us really know what all is in play as far as what funds are encumbered, what the terms of agreements are, all those different things, trying to weed our way through that. The district proposed and the board approved at the last Thursday meeting bringing a financial consultant on board to help the district find a way through that, to, in essence, find a way through all those things to find a solution to get the revenue in place to make that project happen. I've heard numbers everywhere from $2 million just to get the pump station at the intersection of Etna Parkway and Refugee and pump it south to our existing line at 40. But then you've got another $3 million to go north to really get the gravity in line to get to Broad and make the sites developable. This is all obviously comes into play when you have multiple entities, right? So there's a lot, I think personally, that will need to be examined, possibly items that need to be unwound and maybe redone. But certainly it needs looked at, and in the 10 years that I'm aware of that has really been going, that has not been done, and that's unfortunate because we've kind of been in the dark trying to figure out a solution that nobody really knows what direction they're going. That's my personal thought on it. So that I proposed, when we last met with the city officials that we met with, could the district put forth the funds and a good faith effort to find a solution, knowing that the district will then obviously reap the benefit of revenues and through tap fees and user fees and things like that, and the city then will see it develop. And that is what I proposed to the board, and the board authorized up to $30,000 to be expended for a consultant. It would be an economic development, basically a financial consultant that could look through all those things and make proposals to us that then we would help the city or recommend to the city get in place to find the solutions, to either get bond financing or do something with the JED that probably seems it might even be a hindrance at this point. Whatever that is, none of us know what the solution is, but we've got to have somebody present recommendations and ideas so that we know where we're going and how to get there. So, again, the board did authorize that. I forwarded a interagency agreement to him just today. I apologize. We meant to get that to him earlier. Was not at all expecting any kind of action tonight from council, but I would ask that he would look it over and legal counsel, and maybe you all could talk about it. Not proposing that it changes anything of our current agreements that we have in place. I'm again thrilled, and I haven't been before you since you all enacted that. So I would press pause and thank you all for doing that. Excited to see how the district and the city are moving forward. And I guess I would also take an opportunity just to press pause and say Mr. Gilcher made the statement at our Thursday regular board meeting. This is the first time, I'm sorry, I didn't say this is the first time he said this. It is clear to him that the district and the city are working better together now than he can remember, is what he said. So thankful for that and excited for the opportunities that are coming. But at any rate, we proposed an interagency agreement that basically spells out what I said. The district will front the money to get that in place so that we all know how to get there, and the district specifically will know how to get revenue streams identified to get the sanitary sewer extensions in place. You guys will obviously be needed because you're a key part to it, and there will be different agreements and things that we need to look at. Can't forget the property owners, right? Normally when you have development projects, so Did have a conversation with Mr. Emsweiler. It's probably been a month ago, but he is supportive, this is before this discussion, but of trying to find a solution to that issue out there also. So I think that good things are to come. I think that this is the right step to take. I don't know that the district by itself or the city by itself can come up with the right solution. Again, we look back at 10 years and nobody's come up with a solution. I think this is the right way to do it, to bring in a consulting firm to give us all the different options. So I'm excited about that. I'm happy to answer any questions about anything, that or anything else going on with the district.
Anything for Rob tonight? While we got him here.
I mean, it's been a couple of months now. Come on. Don't be shy.
All right, well, hey, thanks for coming in. Thanks for the update. That's
Thank you.
awesome. That's good, positive news, so
Okay.
thank you.
Well, I will hope to be in, maybe back next council meeting. If you are to entertain that agreement, I'd love to be here for that. So, okay.
Boys,
Thank you all for your time. See you.
boys doing all right?
Thank you, Rob. They're doing great. I just, my youngest just turned 7 today, so we're gonna go back and have some more cupcakes.
Very good. Thanks,
Okay,
Rob.
thanks, Rob.
Should we go down the list?
Yes, please.
Kip Kelsey's next.
Anybody else before Kip?
Connie Klima, Jerica Zuckerman, Jody Bowen, Heschel Zuckerman.
We're gonna, Kip's gonna come in and speak under my report, so go ahead and start with everybody and bring them in, except Kip.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Jerica?
Hello, name and address, please.
Jerica Zuckerman, 6368 Summit Road Southwest. Just wanted to start off, I watched the rest of the last meeting live stream, and I just appreciate everybody coming together kind of for the kids in regards to the pool. I know that there was some underlying issues that, you know, were being asked and stuff like that, but the importance of having it open for our community, and if we can open it, you know, it's much appreciated, so thank you. And for your hard work on all of it. Obviously, here in regards to Sage Point, tonight is hopefully voting on it. You know, I'm not going to touch on everything we spoke about last time, but I know that a question was asked when I left, and I feel like the answer wasn't fully, I'm not sure if it was either not fully heard or it had to do with the density and the lot sizes. And from my recollection reading it and speaking to the zoning was that the wording didn't really say density or lot size. In that area, it kind of just talked about lot size. And the lot sizes don't meet that, you know, recommendation in our comprehensive plan. The density does meet the zoning, but in the comprehensive plan, it specifies recommended lot sizes. Those are the ones kind of like the 3/4 acre, I think it's like 2 acres or something, you know, the minimum was 20,000 or something like that. I don't have my notes in front of me. But you know, that's what that area is, and I know that you guys have thought long and hard about all these different projects coming in. I was surprised that the housing one on Mill didn't go through, because those are projects that I thought we were looking for in this area. But you know, of this density in that area, I just hope that you guys would consider maybe bringing in a project with less houses that brings more of that rural setting. So, appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Does Connie not wish to speak?
She wanted to go last.
Okay, very good.
Jody?
The PA system's working great.
Good evening. Hi.
Name and address, you know the drill.
Yes, sir. My name is Jody Bowen, 13645 Cleveland Street, here in Pataskala. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight and for your service to the community. I've been here for over 30 years. Seen a lot of change, not all of it bad, not all of it good. In the beginning, my home was part of the Lima Township. They made some interesting zoning decisions, in my opinion. Later, we voted to be part of Pataskala and not part of Reynoldsburg. I still feel we meet that identity. I feel as a citizen, I have a responsibility to vote, pay my taxes, and share my views. Ms. Cleva has a responsibility to her clients, the applicant in this instance, and make sure their needs are met. As a business person, the applicant, I would guess, has a goal to build homes and make a profit. This council has the task for whatever is best for the community, which I'm sure is not an easy decision at this time. The majority of the zoning board has already voiced their opinion twice that they feel that this is not the right development for this area. I happen to agree with the zoning board. The houses in this area sit back 20 to 25 feet. It's very short frontage. Therefore, widening the road in this area would be very costly and detrimental, in my opinion, to the existing homeowners. There are approximately 215 houses between, on Cleveland, between Mink and Summit, not counting the current expansion that's going on in the Rona project, and that's about 1.1 miles long. There's approximately 200 houses on the other side of Cleveland between Summit and Taylor, which includes the Monarch development, and this is about 0.8 of a mile long. This is roughly 415 residents whose primary access is Cleveland Road, and at 2 cars per household, that's 830 vehicles just for us that live on here. Additionally, this area is a main corridor, as I discussed the last time, for getting to and from Licking Heights schools in general. According to Wiki, there's 4,600 students there. The traffic on Summit, Mink, Taylor, and most definitely Cleveland is a high cut-through road to get to and from school. Driving on Summit Road from Cleveland, heading north to Cable Road, where the high schools are located, is approximately 2 miles from that intersection. From Cleveland to heading south, there's approximately 0.2 of a mile before you hit the first school entrance on Summit from Cleveland. That's 5 schools within 2.2 miles of the intersection of Cleveland and Summit where this development is proposed. And don't forget the railroad tracks. All the buses must stop and should stop at the railroad tracks. That jams up the traffic in both directions. There's about 240 feet between the railroad tracks and Cleveland, and less than that in the other direction to Harris. Now, you get those buses stopping there, it's a jam. Unless you have a kind neighbor to let you out, you will not get out. And if you want to take a shortcut and go straight on Cleveland, don't try to make a left onto Taylor Road to head south, because everybody's turning onto Cleveland to get to school. Improvements to broaden Summit are much needed, and I know the council is looking at it, and I appreciate that. There's only about 490 feet between Broad Street and the first exit to the school, entrance to the school if you're heading north.
1 minute.
Thank you. And the cars back up in both turn lanes. I think the mayor even directed traffic at a bad accident there in the beginning of March. Someone's going to get hurt in this area. I think it's going to be high density. I think what belongs in this area is something similar that the Mill Street project that was already turned down. I think it wasn't right for that area, but it is right, in my opinion, for this area, the lower density kind of a project. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, Heschel Zuckerman, 6368 Summer Road Southwest. And I'm not going to go through everything, because I never really do. Our issues are simple. We don't have the police force, we don't have the school capacity. Obviously, we don't have our streets are not in that area, not designed to hold all that traffic, and then ditto on everything else they said. That's it.
Thank you.
Well, that was so sure that hardly rates a wipe, Jock.
Half white.
You could just use the same wipe from before. To save, we should have used the Zuckermans at the same time, and then we didn't have to wipe after them. They're in the same household. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I can't help myself.
That's quite all right.
Matthew Rosenberg, PO Box 115, Summit Station, Ohio. Proud to be in Summit Station, now part of Itascola. Now, Summit Station, as we all discussed, we know it's going to grow, but we want it to grow appropriately. You know, today I had the pleasure of being over at one of the new Schumacher custom home builds over on Haynes Corner. Perfect, beautiful lot size, beautiful house. They're selling those lots like hotcakes. I get to go out Harrison Township. They're selling those lots, 1 acre lots, beautiful homes, custom homes. It doesn't have to be a development as what we want to grow. We want to grow, yes, but we want to grow on our terms, not on a developer's terms. You know, as we've said before, you know, for a planned development district, there's certain check boxes that have to be checked. And not all these boxes have been checked. That is why the zoning board turned it down. And that's why we're asking you guys to turn it down again. I don't want to waste your guys' time. I know you guys are pure land. I appreciate all you do for our community. You all are excellent. So I'm just asking again, please turn this down so that we can have development that's appropriate for our area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You missed a spot.
Connie?
Connie Klingel, PO Box 991, Itascola, Ohio. When I was last here and spoke, I asked tonight to go last because I wanted to hear once again some of the concerns of the people of the neighborhood that we're asking to build in. And after the last meeting, I went home and I was thinking about it in the evening when I went to bed, and I thought, you know, the majority of the issues that are coming up are about road improvements and traffic. And if this development's not approved, it doesn't help road improvements existing, which we've heard on and on and on about. We've also heard about me representing a client and a client who wants to make money. Well, this client's worked very hard and spent a lot of money to be in Itascola. It's not always about just making money, which everybody has to do. It's also about doing quality homes and about trying to do what the community wants, which is why we have been on this path for so long. Came back and forth, even looked at doing the larger lots without cluster, got some response from council members that they actually like the cluster more because of the large open areas and the ability for the spaces and the trees to be preserved. When people are talking about how long they've been in Itascola, I don't just take clients on because I'm an attorney. I take clients on because I believe in what they're doing. Otherwise, I don't have the spirit or the mind to know how to represent them. I've lived in the area and was born and raised here, and I'm 61 years old, so I've been here quite a while. And I still come and go to Kroger, and I still come and go here, and I'm a part of the community. Worked on the town hall. I've been a part of a lot of this area. Grew up going to our pools, and grew up watching movies on top of the second floor of the town hall. Son of Flubber, which was one of the first ones shown there, still black and white. I'm here tonight because what I'm asking is that you consider something that I raised with Tim after the last meeting and Jamie, and asked my client if they would consider waiting a bit to see if the city would consider a TIF for this particular area. Summit Road is being developed. If it's us that comes in and you would approve it, it would participate in the TIF and be a great jumping start. But we know there's going to be other development that will come naturally on this area, and the TIF dollars that would help take nothing out of the pocket of the taxpayers there. In fact, the people that are here, their tax dollars would go for their own improvements that they've been asking for. In addition to that, I wanted to say that my client Al Coughlin, because the Broad and Summit's been brought up over and over again, has every reason to want a TIF there also and have a commercial TIF there, which would be able to spur a lot more dollars. So we start at the Broad Summit area and we start moving north on Summit, and you start looking at the tax dollars that come in over time, but also
the ability to gather money up at the beginning of these things and do improvements currently that are helped paid off by your TIF. So if you will tonight, I'd like you to consider tabling our application, our ordinance, not because we're playing with time and want you to continue to think about this, but we want you to consider the TIF idea. If it doesn't go anywhere, we'll ask you back and have you vote. But my client and I would like you to consider that opportunity to see how that could work, not only for our development, but also for the community in the Summit Road area. Thank you.
Is that it?
Ready for Kip?
No.
Hold off?
Yeah, we can hold off. Thank you. All right, update on the interviews for Board of Zoning Appeals?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did not have any applicants that met the deadline, any applicants at all. However, I have had some interest from a local citizen who's qualified, and I told him that the deadline would be extended, so I think we'll have at least one applicant. So what I'm proposing is that we move the deadline, we re-advertise and have the new deadline of July 2nd, which would allow the those to come in and be we could review them before our meeting on July 6th. So unless there's any serious objection from council, we'll put that, and I'll talk to Kathy about getting that taken care of. So hopefully we'll have an applicant or maybe more applicants for consideration on July 6th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. You can make that happen, Kathy?
July 2nd, that will be after our packets go out.
So July 1st? Okay, July 1st. They'll be in the packet. Okay, I wasn't sure because of the holiday, but okay, very good.
Very good. Thank you. All right, introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Epperson. Discussion and roll.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda passes. On to reports. I've got a couple of things tonight, and I would like to start out tonight with a discussion on reopening Mayor's Court. And I have Kip waiting in the wings. He'd like to come in and give a little insight on his aspect of where we're at with Mayor's Court, so I think we'll start with that. Scott, if you'd bring in Kip, I'd appreciate it. And then we'll hear from Bruce, and feel free to ask after Kip talks for a bit, if you have any questions or insight. We can include.
There's no way to talk to a magistrate.
What's that?
There's no way to talk to a judicial officer.
Oh, okay. So, if you have questions for Jamie, for Bruce, Kip, anybody, we'll try to answer them as we see what's going to happen here with the future. Good evening, Kip. Right here, sir, at the.
Where do I go? Oh.
Yep, at the podium. And just for the record, name and address, so we have that, please.
Absolutely. Kip Kelsey, K-I-P, K-E-L-S-E-Y, Columbus, Ohio. And I've been your magistrate since February of 2007, going into my 14th year. First of all, Mr. Mayor, thank you. President Compton, members of the board, I appreciate the time you're giving me to come in and address a topic that's near and dear to me, and that's your Mayor's Court. I've got a presentation that has about 6 items that I want to cover. I plan to do so as quickly as I can, and then after that I'm going to open it up to Q&A. So if anybody wants to go into any of those topics or any other topic, feel free. First of all, I'm probably preaching to the choir when I tell you that Mayor's Court is a service, not a business. But what I do want to stress with you tonight is the fact that as a service, the value of that service isn't necessarily predicated on dollars. The time that it takes someone to come to this court, go through the process, might be an hour, A lot of people walk here, ride bikes. Many of them don't have licenses, so they get a ride. For those that then would have to go down to Newark to have their case heard, becomes very much more difficult. Not only do they have to find somebody who's willing to take them down there and expend 2 or 3 hours, but they have to find a place to park and pay for the parking. Now, some folks come here for their cases, they're suspended, but they drive anyway. I've always thought that was a little odd since the police department's right across the street, but nevertheless, they have to do what they have to do. But I think it's convenient for our citizens to have this close, handy, and in many cases walkable. If you go down to Lincoln County Municipal Court, as I say, you're gonna spend 2 to 3 hours. You're gonna be in a process, as Mr. Barstow, I'm sure, is well aware, that's somewhat like a cattle call. You are amongst many, and the judge and the prosecutor have to get through a stack of cases by noon. And they're not really anxious to hear about your troubles and tribulations. When they come to my court, I give them time. Many times they just want to vent. They just want to tell their story, and that's fine. I'll listen to it. And that's value to them. Next, the cost of Lincoln County Municipal Court. As you may know, we paid through Doug Sasson, who was the law director down there in Newark, $45,000, as I understand it. Whether we have any cases here or not, that's a set fee that he has per year to hear the cases that are sent down there, not the cases that we hear. But if you add the cases that will be sent down there, anywhere from 600 to maybe 1,000 cases more than he's currently hearing, if you think that $45,000 is gonna stay put, I think you're wrong. That'll go up, and it'll go up dramatically. So there'll be certainly a major cost increase with having all of our cases go down there versus only some. Something you may want to consider too, and that's this. If our cases are going down there, and we have our officers or officers going down there to cover their case, they're being tied up during the day, usually in the morning. And those that may not be on duty, it's their day off, as I understand it, there's a 4-hour minimum pay that they get, whether they're down there for an hour or the full 4 hours. That's 4 hours they're getting paid. And what if? It's not a matter of when, gentlemen, ladies. It's just a matter of time before we have a major problem here in this community. It's happening everywhere. What I'm talking about is an active shooter, officer down, or anything of that magnitude. Do you want your officers sitting in a courtroom down in Newark? Or do you want them here in our jurisdiction where they're minutes away? So you might want to give that some thought. Secondly, the court is self-sustaining. I handed you, I think you got it hopefully, this graph. And the reason I did that is because I want to go over a couple things with you pertaining to that, and that is this. At approximately 1,000 cases, and as you can see, that's extremely doable. In fact, has been doable except for the last few years. At 1,000 cases, we break even, no cost to the city. Above 1,000, and we got as high as 1,800, we're putting money into the general fund, not taking it out. 2017, we had 1,040. That's just a few years ago. 2019, we had less than 500. In 1918, we had 610. But that was the year that Tanya was out for 2 months. She had a broken leg, knee, and whatever things she had at the time. And we had 2 months where all of our cases then were sent down to Lincoln County Municipal Court. Why? Because unfortunately, and I'll take some of the blame for this, we did not cross-train anybody to do her job. Now, there were some reasons behind that that I don't need to go into. But she was the only one that knew how to use the software in the computer system. That is no longer the case. Jess and I are up to speed on that. In fact, I'll talk about this in a minute. I'm quite versed now in how to handle the computer, which is surprising at my age. But anyway, so why does this caseload go down? I thought about that for quite a while, and at first I thought, well, maybe the officers just weren't that anxious to send cases here. And it became clear to me that that's not the case. And I'll tell you why our cases are down. And the reason is we have 22, including you, is that right, Chief?
Yes, sir.
22 officers on our roster. According to the FBI statistic, Pataskala with its population should have 38. 22 versus 38. So we don't have the capacity of the officers to go out and properly do the job here. And those that are on the force, many of them are new. Some of them are still in training, in fact. And they're new to where they're not efficient, like an older officer who can clear a scene in X number of minutes after writing a ticket for domestic violence. It take a lot longer. Sometimes they need to ask questions where the sergeant might have to come by and help them out. But also, there's a myth that, well, Pataskala has gotten bigger. We've got so many more citizens in our community now. So why not think that we've got more speeders or traffic violators? Well, we do. The problem is we also have more domestic violence. We have more felonies, burglaries, more serious drug cases. The encroachment from the Columbus area coming into Licking County on your western borders is significant in terms of crime. Don't kid yourselves, it's coming. In fact, it's already here. So now you've got all these more citizens with all the more traffic that you think would bring into our community and bolster our community court, mayor's court, but it also means that we've got a lot more domestic violence cases and everything else. Domestic violence case, by the way, is not just a couple of husband and wife not getting along. They're probably, if I'm not mistaken, probably one of the more dangerous and high-risk runs that these officers make. So usually when they go to these things, it's not just one officer trying to break up a squabble. There's usually two because violence does occur. So that's taking up those officers. But the problem is, folks, that no matter how hard I work or how efficient our court can be, we are totally dependent on the number of cases that I get. And that's just a fact of life. But at 1,000, we'll put money in your coffers. Next, cost savings. So I thought, well, okay, we've got that situation. What can we do to help out? What are we able to maybe cut corners with so we don't have the expense? And it might then become a value thing where you say, okay, it's worth this to us, value-wise, and put $1. If I can come under that, maybe then it might make some sense. So I fostered the idea, and I think you've heard already about the idea of a bailiff position. So here's the idea, and as I say, if you've already heard it, bear with me. But right now, or before Bob died, Bob Wheeler, by the way, was a lieutenant for over 30 years on the department, and he was also our security officer and bailiff. And then he got sick, somewhat infirm, so we ended up having to also have a security officer from the police department to help out. But anyway, the idea is this. Right now we have a bailiff and a security officer. Security officer being an officer from the Pataskala Police Force. The bailiff is self-sufficient because we have a $5 per case court cost. Doesn't come out of anybody's budgets. You don't pay a dime for the bailiff. It's the defendants that come in pay an extra $5. As you recall, several years ago, our court cost went from $75 to $80. Still, by the way, way under Lincoln County Municipal Court's court costs, but nevertheless. The defendants fund the bailiff's position. So what if we can eliminate the need for an officer off the street, not being out there helping the citizens or taking care of crime, but get him back on the street and just have one position. And that position would be filled by someone who's then funded totally by the defendants at the $5 rate. That person would have to be OPATA trained, Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy, meaning that he's qualified as a peace officer in comports with the Ohio Supreme Court directive. So we'd probably be looking at someone who is a retired police officer or sheriff officer. And I think we could find some very good people to fit that description. So that would eliminate the cost of the police officer, who we pay, by the way. Again, that comes out of the budget. The other thought I had, and is also very doable at this point, is instead of having mayor's court every Thursday, let's go every other Thursday. In fact, let's make it easy on everybody, including the officers. Let's make it twice a month, the first and third Thursdays, for example. So that would cut, not quite in half, because we're gonna have more cases on the alternate days than we would if we had it every week. But it would certainly cut down on a lot of the costs. So those two alone, I think, would make a very big dent in what the overall budget would be for our court. Zoning. Yeah, let's talk about zoning. When I was hired by Steve Butcher back, as I say, in '07, he told me that he wanted to make zoning a priority because of some problems. Among them was the problem that the EPA had with Pataskala. We were on a watch list. I don't know how many of you knew that, but we were on a watch list by the EPA because of violations that they felt weren't being cured or cured quick enough. Well, then Scott and Steve came in and took over, and what a difference they made. We're no longer on a watch list. The zoning is being corrected, and it's being looked at. Year to date, Steve has filed 600 violations. And of those 600, half or 300 have been against contractors. Now, one of the things that Steve told me, which I was interested in hearing, was that one of the biggest weapons he has in his arsenal to get these contractors to comply with EPA regulations is a threat. Just the threat of coming to mayor's court. Why? Mayor's court. Well, the reason is mayor's court is a public place with public records. And these contractors, they don't want their name brought up in any kind of court problem. It's bad for PR, bad for business, so they don't want any part of it. And so they'll straighten up, get the things done, and I forgot what those things are that keep the water from running into the cities. But anyway, those kind of things are constant. And we have a couple of builders that have been perpetual at it. I'm happy to hear that one of them has straightened it out and they finally got a whole new crew and we're not having any more problems with it. But let me also tell you this, that Doug Sasson has made it clear here recently, and I just found this out, that he will not, let me repeat that, he will not take our zoning cases. They're dead in the water as far as he's concerned. So what's going to happen to our zoning cases, particularly now that you've got this new legislation that's going to probably increase the caseload? I don't know. Number 5, our court is still operating, folks. At the end of February, Tanya abruptly quit. We started filing our cases over Lincoln County Municipal Court. Then after that, of course, COVID-19 came, and then everything shut down, including Lincoln County Municipal Court. Yesterday, last Friday, I made a call. It's my understanding that Lincoln County Municipal Court is going to try to open up in July. Now, they're still hearing teleconferences for motions, and they're still hearing video conferences for jail cases. But in terms of trying to open up, they're going to be doing that in July, hopefully. Even though we started sending our cases immediately after Tanya quit the end of February, we still had between 60 and 70 active cases in the pipeline that have been postponed because of the COVID-19 virus, but we're going to start hearing those this coming Thursday and the following Thursday for about 30, 35 cases each of those days, just to try to resolve them. In addition to those cases, we have a lot of cases that are in what we call warrant status. They didn't come to court, there's a warrant, doesn't go out everywhere, it just stays here locally, and so we get a warrant block on the license and the license forfeiture. But they come back every once in a while because now they need to get their license back because the job requires it, or whatever the reasons. We get a lot of those cases coming in that need to be resolved, so we hear those. As I say, both Jess and I are up to speed, so I've been in working with these cases and taking care of them. And so I would ask that you take that into consideration, that we're still operating, but we don't have any new cases coming in the pipeline. Lastly, if it's the decision of this council to terminate Mayor's Court, you need to understand that it's not like a light switch. You just don't come in and say, well, we're not going to have Mayor's Court anymore, and flip off the switch and we're done. No, I'm sorry. As Brian will tell you from our personal experience, that shutting down a Mayor's Court is not only involving, it's time consuming. We currently have, in my estimation, I looked at it the other day, between 400 and 500 open warrants. In addition to that, we have people on diversion, and we have a number of people that are on probation. Particularly, we have 12 cases where they're OVIs. Mr. Barstow knows on an OVI case, there's a 1-year probation period that is not waivable, not dischargeable, and I can't even reduce it. It's statutory. I go up to 3 years, but 1 year is a minimum. So what do you do with those cases? The 500, 400, 500 cases, do you think Licking County Municipal Court's going to want to hear those or take them over? They're already going to be behind the power curve when you open up the court again. They're not going to take our cases, so what do we do with them? Well, I can dismiss them. Sure I can. On those cases, it just galls me a little bit, I'm sorry. When people come into this court, they pay their fines and court costs and do the right thing. And we have 400 or 500 folks out there that skipped out, but are going to get rewarded because I have to dismiss their cases. What signal does that set? And the 12 that OVI probation cases, I'm going to have to do something with that because I can't terminate them. And that's just that part of it. Then you've got the whole paperwork deal where you, Supreme Court, B&B, a number of other entities that interact with us that we have to notify and notify in a proper way. All of that being done, once that's settled, then the court is closed. But what if we get that levy passed and we get four officers, and now it becomes prudent maybe to think about Mayor's Court again. Again, it's not a light switch, folks. It's going to take time and effort for someone to come in and reopen it. Question and answer, Mr. Barstow, please, don't let me down.
No, I mean, Kip, I had a lot of discussions with Jamie and with the mayor, with Mr. Hicken, and I think that I'm satisfied that even if Mayor's Court loses, quote unquote, looking at a business model, loses a small amount of money, which I think it does right now, because we just don't have as many cases. We didn't in 18, we didn't in 17. Well, in 17 we had over 1,000. That's the tipping point. For the convenience of the citizens, to the citizens, And then the officers not having to drive over to Newark, you consider overtime, wear and tear on the cars, gasoline, et cetera, et cetera. By the time you start adding it all up, there's a lot of hidden costs. I think that it's worth it to keep the court open, at least in my view. Again, I said it before, I like mayor's courts, I practice in them, I think they're great. They're great for defendants, I think they're great for the citizens of the community, so, I don't have a problem with them. And I appreciate the ideas to go back to, as the caseload has gone down, to go to just 2 days, or two days a month. Excuse me, I think that's prudent, because you have a smaller caseload, you can have that flexibility. And then, the bailiff position, I think, consolidating those, if we could have someone who's OPATA trained. In fact, I bumped into a former retired Franklin County Sheriff's Deputy at the Kroger on Friday, and I was talking to him, I asked him, telling him that we were thinking about doing this, and I got his contact information, so he may be one of your first applicants. He worked at the courthouse. So they're right, there are folks here, retired officers in the community, that would be interested in applying and having that job, and that would be appropriate for them. So I think that's I'm satisfied that once we can reopen based on the Supreme Court's guidelines, COVID guidelines, that we should reopen and go forward, and just I don't have any issues.
Well, thank you, Mr. Barstow.
Sure.
I appreciate your remarks. With that in mind, we did send out an application for the position. And I believe we got, 17 responses. Of those 17, 7 were given the okay because he actually met the minimums by the board.
TBR.
This
TBR.
is for the clerk's position.
This is
not
for the
bailiff.
clerk's
Sorry.
position.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me clarify that for the clerk's position. Of those 7, Chris and I had a chance to look, and I think maybe even Todd at this point has had a chance to look at those 7.
Tim.
Tim, I'm sorry.
All right.
Todd, I don't think you've seen it yet, but in any event, of those 7, there are 4, possibly 5, that are good candidates. Some of them, there's 2 of them that I have some concerns about. One was up in Mansfield. I think that's problematic. Another one hasn't really stayed in the job more than 2 years for quite a while, and I think there's some issues there that I'm concerned about. But it certainly boils down to about 3 very good candidates, all local and have some court experience. The concern I would have is that if it's the decision of this council to keep mayor's court even at a reduced level, I would strongly suggest that we move forward in interviewing those people before they either move on or change their minds.
Well, I can only speak for myself. We basically have a hiring freeze right now. We're not hiring anybody, and we've asked directors to not. We didn't fill a position in the finance department that's open. We've asked directors to look for ways that they can defer projects. I think Mr. Haynes had a couple of suggestions of things that can be deferred or reduced to next year. So I know Mr. Nicholson at the last meeting, our revenues were down 30-some%.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you an update when we get to
Okay,
our report.
he's gonna give me an update. I know it's not gonna be good because I saw in the newspaper this afternoon, electronic version from the dispatch that the City of Columbus revenues are down tremendously. So, right now we're not just hiring anybody, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess I feel differently because it's a position we already have.
Well, that's a position we already have,
Yeah.
but we funded it. I'm just.
I mean, if
That's
the former person hadn't left, she'd
Right,
still be
she'll
here.
still be here. So, those are just my thoughts. Other council members may have other thoughts, but.
I think Andy was.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned the court costs
Yes.
being much lower than Lincoln County, and they are.
Yes.
Do you feel that they are too low? Do you think that there are some adjustments? The idea is, I'll echo Mr. Barstow, the ideas that you've come up with, trying to do this is twice a month. I think those are very good ideas, and obviously the zoning has taken some court cases away from mayor's court, which is also good. But if indeed it is a large benefit, and I agree that it is. My experience in Mayor's Court has always been that it's a huge advantage for the client to be in Mayor's Court versus Licking County. Is there something else you would look at, or at least evaluate as far as costs go? Would those costs go up by chance?
Well, there's an old saying that you can make a pizza so cheap that no one's gonna wanna eat it. And I think that it applies here that we can, and in reverse, by the way, that we can up our court costs to the point where no one's gonna wanna come here, they'd rather go down to Licking County Municipal Court, because it might be cheaper. I mean, we can get to that point. So, in structuring, what I did way back when I structured, the court and the court costs and the fine schedule and everything else, what I did was I looked specifically at Licking County Municipal Court and their schedule and fines. Judge Higgins is a good personal friend of mine, so I worked very closely with him to kind of come up with some sort of balance where if someone was to come to our court, Mayor's Court, that he would certainly not come out any worse than if he went down to Licking County Municipal Court. And usually they come out better. The fine is pretty much on par when you add it to the court costs as to what it would be when you go down to Licking County Municipal Court. Now, they put an emphasis on their court costs, but their fines are lower. I did it in reverse, and I did that for a reason. Because in court costs, a lot of the court costs are split up, and that's why I say there's a lot of entities that have to be informed of closing a court down. There's a lot of entities that get a piece of the pie on the court costs, but we get all of the fines. So I'd rather have a higher fine schedule that we keep 100% of than a higher court cost that we only get a partial amount. So that was my reasoning.
Well, there's a balancing there also.
It
If
is.
you don't have fines, then you've got, you know, if they avoid fines or whatever the case may be,
That's
you would
correct.
have zero on that.
That's
So anyhow, just bringing it up, obviously, from
No,
our point of
I'm-
view is,
I'm glad you did it.
you know, there has to be a balance
There
between
does.
the two.
Mr. Lee?
Well, actually, Mr. Walther took my question, so I was gonna ask the exact same thing. I'll just go a little bit further with it then.
Sure.
Would that be the case, your reverse? That makes total sense. What about with the code violations, the contractors you said? Is that the same, or could we fine them a little bit more, or charge
Yes.
them a little bit more? Is that
Yes.
somewhere we could?
Yes, to answer your question. Understand that, and there's a formula that I've created, I'm glad to share it with you. It's the first thing they get is a letter, the second time they get a warning, it's certified mail, then they get, again, one more warning, and then they get cited in the court. So they've had 4 bites of the apple before they even come to me. And at that point, shame on them, in my opinion, because they've had a lot of chances. Steve is very, very workable to get things done. Now you've got contractors versus the citizens. So with the contractors, yeah, they got deep pockets. We can hit them pretty hard. But when folks come in under normal zoning problems because of weeds or gutters or junk cars or whatever, many times they're not that well off. In fact, it's hard for them to make any kind of payment. So I try to be somewhat cognizant of their ability to pay. So my goal in those cases is compliance. So if they can come in and show that they comply, they go out just paying court costs. And that covers bringing them into court, and I don't dig them. They've done what we wanted them to do. Contractors, on the other hand, if they come in and they get to that degree, yeah.
So you think we could bump that up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Now understand that under zoning, most of the cases are $100 per day per offense and 30 days in jail per offense. I don't put anybody in jail in a zoning case, at least not yet, but,
I think the statutory fine schedule in the revised code is more for a corporate entity.
double.
And I think I was gonna say, I thought it was double. I know it is for felonies, but I think it's double. So
a first-degree misdemeanor is $1,000 for an individual, would be $2,000 for a corporate entity. So they can be fined much more significantly, potentially, and have a much greater ability to pay, potentially, than with the guy who's got a,
That makes sense.
health problem and can't get his junk car off his lot, his property, or something like that.
It's not uncommon, for example, if the zoning case comes in that's a contractor, particularly if, I call them frequent flyers, if they've come in before, they'll walk away with $500 to $1,000 fine.
And I'll just end by saying that I appreciate the presentation. It was very informative. I learned a bunch. And just full disclosure, I was one that was on the fence, and you answered all my concerns, but it wasn't anything with you. It was just there
Well, I
was
don't take it personally.
there was several different numbers that were floating around, and anywhere from upwards of almost six figures of what we were losing, and once we grasped that, I think as a council, I don't know how it went that way, it did, but
Sure.
I feel very comfortable with it, and I'd be in full support of getting things
Thank
going.
you.
So.
Thank you. I can't help to tell you that I'm very proud of this court. I'm a magistrate, not only in this one, but several others. I'm also a member of the Central Ohio Mayor's Court Clerks Association, so I have a chance. Plus, I do some work with other courts too that need backup. Our court, folks, is probably one of the finest, best courts of mayor's courts that are around. There's Dublin, Upper Arlington. They have gobs of money. They have more resources. But for anybody even our size or even larger, we were the first. I'm bragging, and I don't mean to take up your time. I'm sorry.
Well, I just have,
Can I ask a question, Jamie? So the mayor's court clerk position, that's funded, we funded that when we passed the budget last year for this year, so that's funded.
Correct.
That's not an additional cost.
It's in the budget.
It's in the budget, so it's not, we're creating something new. And then the bailiff position
Was not
funded, but we are going to be eliminating the need, if we hire the bailiff, that's a POTA certified, that'll eliminate the need, right, chief? They have an officer come and be on overtime or be paid or in some fashion out of the mayor's court budget.
We did budget for a police officer a certain amount of hours in the court.
Okay.
When the guys work court duty, the hours get shifted on the payroll accounting system so that the court picks
The
up the
court
cost.
picks it up, so that would come off.
but we won't need that
Yeah,
anymore.
we don't need that, we have the.
If we fill the bailiff position, but until that happens, we would still continue to need the
And the
officer.
bailiff will support itself.
Right, but the bailiff position has paid off the fines, at least,
Correct.
yeah.
It's self-sufficient.
It's self-sufficient, so, yeah, having that, then I don't, as long as we're complying with the Supreme Court guidelines, I don't see why we can't reopen, that's just my view.
Well, I'm sorry, just so there's some clarification. It's self-sufficient at 800 cases. If everybody came into court, and I did the numbers just yesterday, if everybody that came into court paid, in other words, they actually paid, then 600 would be self-sufficient. But about a quarter to as many as maybe a third may not come in or pay, so that bumps up the break-even point at 800 cases for the bailiff. If that
I
clarifies.
just want to make a quick point too, when our former clerk left, she just left, and Jess and Kip spent hundreds of hours making sure, well,
Lot of hours.
between you and Jess, I'm sure,
Yeah.
there were weeks and weeks that you pulled it back and made it at work so that we could at least see what we were doing, because we had no idea, totally no idea. So it's not like mayor's court just quit anyway. I mean, we kept going, so I'd like to, we just have to have some direction if one, to get that person, so these people aren't the 4 or 5 or whoever, have we done the interviews yet?
No.
Okay, we just have the 5 finalists who are going to do their interviews, and I'd love to see us proceed with that and get that position filled, because we're either going to lose them or they'll stay with their job, or they'll say, hey, I'm not interested, or whatever. I don't want, we went through, what, 2 processes, right? So, I'd like to make sure everybody's on board with that so we can fill that position. Yes?
You're asking for the clerk and the bailiff to reopen that, and I see with the bailiff, it pays for itself. We save the overtime costs, and it gets an officer back on the street, not here. I mean, that seems to make sense.
The clerk position, then Kip doesn't have to come in and it will relieve Jess. I mean, it's a position that, will relieve some, I mean, they're still running the court right now, whether it's open or not. There's still things that have to be done, and you spent weeks resurrecting it from the dead there for a little bit too, so looking for some direction.
Well, I mean, again, my thought, as I said, we have an open position in the finance department that we have not filled, that's already been budgeted. So, and I think that's something the council needs to discuss, the full council, not just me, the full council needs to discuss, how we want to treat that. We don't want to be treating departments differently. So we have 2 positions here that have been budgeted, funded. One we've made a conscious decision not to fill. The other one we're being asked not to fill, but to resurrect or to reinstate. So that's just, to me, that's just the question, how we're going to handle that. So, Jamie, I mean, in terms of the financial picture of the city, is hiring someone to fill the clerk position and then having the bailiff position be filled and funded, is that going to cause a problem? Is that going to be an issue financially?
No, I mean, it was included in the budget.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor.
Yes.
Jimmy, just a couple quick questions. On the supplemental that we did to pay for Kip, I think it was a little over $8,000, is that right?
That was a placeholder.
Okay. Is that to fund through the end of the year? What was that to fund for? Was that just the stopgap until such a date? Or
What happened was when Tanya left, it's a where the expenses come in at. So they were budgeted in salaries and related. KIP is a 1099 contract, so it's consulting. It's under contractual services. So what that was moving just $8,000 out of salary and related down to contractual services, because he was spending a lot more hours resurrecting the court, keeping it afloat. And at the time, we didn't know how much, so rather than, we try to overestimate, just figure, I don't want to come back for $2,500 and then a month later go, oh, I need another $2,500. So it was just a placeholder.
in your mind, did that take us through July 1st, or, I mean, I'm just trying to get an idea of a percentage.
KIP's charges have become a lot less. The court is he was doing a lot of stuff trying to figure out, we were left in a mess. He was spending a lot of his time trying to figure everything out to get it up and running. Once he got through that initial surge, his charges have fallen back dramatically, so I think we're good for the rest of the year in the contractual services line for the magistrate. And in the contractual services line, I should say.
Irregardless of the clerk. Irregardless whether we had a clerk
Yeah,
or didn't have a clerk.
because the salary and related, pension, payroll taxes, etc. Tanya hasn't been here for March, April, May, and now June, so we have 4 months. So we're going to have a pretty big positive there, so that would cover for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's essentially what I was asking.
Yeah, that's not an issue. And again, we budgeted for so many hours, and I don't recall, Bruce, if you know, it was a set number of hours. I think we kind of looked at it and said there's 4 mayor's courts a month. On average, it's 3 or 4 hours. So we just did a round number kind of calculation for a police officer to be there, and then budgeted it at the police officer's rate of pay.
Thanks.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
March was ugly. I put in a great deal of time, and when I put my bill together, looked at it, and sent it, it became clear to me that a lot of my work wasn't just as a magistrate at magistrate's pay, but it was clerk work. And I didn't feel right that I should be paid magistrate rate for clerk work. So instead of doing all the calculation, I just cut my bill in half and have had it at half cents. For the month of May, my bill was $0. I didn't do any work. So I'm hoping that this year, even though we're all under the gun, that at least my cost will be minimal.
Anybody else have anything to add? Okay, so, Mr. Administrator, can we,
Well, can we,
I guess I'm asking if we have a consensus to move forward to find a clerk person. I just wanna make sure we,
I guess I would say two things. There have been positions that we have budgeted for that we have not filled. And certainly, if you look at the one in finance, that one wasn't filled, and it was budgeted for the entire season. And I believe Alan also has a position that he didn't fill that was budgeted for. I think from talking to Kip, the clerk position is important if council wants to have mayor's court move forward. And that's probably even more so than the bailiff, in my opinion, even though it's counterintuitive, because the bailiff theoretically pays for itself out of penalties. I think Jess has done a good job working with Kip, but it's not really, I mean, she's going above and beyond in that sense. So I do think that part is important. I've had numerous discussions with Jamie and Kip, and I think once we got our hands wrapped around it, exactly what Mr. Barstow said is true, and I think it's worthwhile. And that would probably be my recommendation. Even though I did say we have had people that have not had budget, people we had budgeted for. That isn't the trick in mind. So, and I would also say that there is no pizza cheap enough for me not to eat.
Well, I mean, I don't think that the administration needs authorization to go forward necessarily and hire a bailiff. It's a budgeted position, it's already authorized, you can go ahead and hire it. We had not, when I said a hiring freeze, it was sort of informal. We didn't pass a resolution or an ordinance that said, no, you can't, we didn't make it formal. We were trusting the good judgment of our administration to not go on a spending binge at this point. So
So with that said, that's a good point. With that said, I would say,
I think
I would stand by what I said.
you go ahead and on the bailiff position, it's, again, Jamie, did we authorize that, I believe, in the budget, did we not?
The bailiff position itself was not included in the budget, the 2020 budget,
Okay.
because the position just got created this year.
Okay.
What was budgeted was a police officer for a certain number of hours, and so those dollars will probably be about the same at the end of the day.
Do we need to do something legislatively to get the bailiff?
I believe you, through legislation, I believe you created the position and it amended the pay matrix, if I recall correctly, but I guess
the resolution.
So at that point, it's an approved position, and as long as, the only reason why we wouldn't do it is if we had a sense council didn't want us to do it, then we'll move forward with getting those positions filled.
Mrs. Carter?
I was just gonna say, common sense is we decide to, if the consensus is we keep mayor's court, which is what I am in support of. I think it's a benefit to the citizens. We get reduces stress on our police department. It's not, a drag on our finances, and it's always much more difficult to bring a program back once it's been taken away. The other piece of funding the go ahead and getting a clerk is, I think the difference for having the clerk is that there's not another person in mayor's court who is there to do that particular set of tasks. Whereas, the finance department, while they're short, they still have people there who do that type of work. The same for, Alan, in that position that we haven't yet filled. The difference for the clerk position is that there's other people happening outside of a clerk's job, taking on those additional responsibilities and causing, undue stress. So, I mean, I think it makes sense if we're going to keep the mayor's court to go ahead and get it settled and functional, and so we can move forward and have it done.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. Have a good day.
Thank you, council. I know that was long. The only other quick thing I have tonight, I just want to bring you up to date on the police income tax. As you know, it did not pass. It was 1,700 against and 1,300 for. I was hoping, obviously, that it would pass. I was hoping that if it didn't pass, at least I'd see some true numbers. I don't think we saw true numbers because, one, the election was canceled the night before, and then we went into mail-in ballots, and it was just a big cluster. So, but 1,700 to 1,300 still gave us some numbers. I've had some discussions with a lot of folks, Mr. Barstow included, when we started talking about if we were going to put it back on in November. And of course, if we'd had the real election and it hadn't passed, we'd have had plenty of time. I don't want to shove this down anybody's throat, and we would have been so backtracked on trying to get it on the November ballot. That's one thing that we discussed. The other thing is knowing that West Licking Fire is putting on a permanent levy, going to try to get a permanent levy passed for the fall. That with the time crunch, and there was a couple of items that came up that I'd love to have administration and finance and Jamie help us with, finance committee maybe. What I saw were two things that people were asking for. They wanted to see where every dollar went, and I know, Tommy had spoken about, Chris had worked on something for utilities that showed.
Chris and Tim, yeah, it was perfect.
I'm sorry?
Chris and Tim.
Okay, Chris and Tim worked on something that showed, where every dollar was going for something for utilities, and I think that's what we need to have, because most people were asking me two things. They said, hey, can we do credits? We saw that, and I don't know if we can or can't, but I'd like to explore that. And also a true figure, and maybe Bruce and Jamie, and we can sit down and say, okay, it's instead of 3 million, maybe it's 2 point. Just narrow it down to an exact. Of course, can't do it exact, but pretty darn close to be able to say, hey, folks, here's what we're paying for: cops, cars, guns, uniforms. Carryover, raises for the police that are already there, the money to get the 4 or 5 new officers, whatever it might be. We have to see, and we have to be able to tell the residents that it's X amount of dollars, and here's where all your money's going. I'm just spitballing here, but if we could work on that, and then maybe next May. Reapproach and take a look at putting it back on the ballot. I mean, I don't want it to go away. I think we got some good input. Like I said, the credits and knowing where the money is going is two big things that I'd heard, and I want to make sure that we're not up against other stuff that's on. Of course, there'll always be things at election time, but and again, our short season, with it being accelerated and us having an election and not having enough time to put it right back on in November. I think we need to get some more of our ducks in a row, so that's where we're at with that. Okay? Any input?
Yeah, I've talked to Jamie a lot about this. If the police department tells us what they want in terms of officers, cruisers, pay, what it's going to cost, the finance department can build that model and see how much it's going to cost. We've spoken to Rita. Rita can tell us what credits there's a lot of things you can do with the credits, and we can have to talk to Mr. Zetz about this, because there's limitations, but Rita can tell us what different credits would produce in terms of income, and that way we will know what we want. What I'd like to have this time is to have the police department tell us, this is what we want. We want X number of officers, and that's gonna cost so much in terms of equipment. We're gonna need X number more cruisers, maybe not one cruiser for every officer, I don't know. That's the police department, calculation, so this, and then pay, scale, you know, we want our pay scale to look like the approximated, the pay scale of X suburb. You know, this is what we want, and with the new officers, and then what we would pay our existing officers, this is how much pay would be. If the police department they don't have to give us the number, they just tell us what they want, just like Alan tells us, you know, I wanna pave this street, these streets, I wanna do this culvert this year or next year, I wanna this, that, and the other. You know, Lanier talks to us about what, you know, in the park department, the same process, so, then we can give that number back, and then we can talk about credits, but that's a lengthy discussion, so we need to start having that now, because if the final deadline for the May primary is that 60 or 90 day, Brian? I don't remember.
I'm not sure, it might be 60.
I think it's 60, but it's
So it'd be,
something.
So it is-
we've gotta be ready by the first of the year.
So we would have to have something, you know, ready to go over to the Board of Elections, you know, early in '21. So this is.
Any other input?
Yeah, just in reference to what you said, what I was referring to is the, what was there, 6 or 7 options that when on utility committee, Chris and Tim, when we were talking about the pay rates, there was,
It was rate options for
the pay rates,
for the
increases.
Yes, for the increases on utilities.
I think we take all those things and put it into that format, because that was very helpful. And then we can just determine, you know, credit that A does this, credit B. That would be very helpful, and then I think, then we put that out to the citizens.
Right.
So, but I agree with Todd, that we can't let any grass grow under our feet, we gotta stay on this, or, it'll be here before we know it, so.
Yep. All right. Well, council, thank you for your patience on both of those topics tonight. I know that was lengthy, but it was very important. Mr. Barstow, what do you have tonight?
I don't have anything, Your Honor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Your Honor, did you call me?
No, I just have it.
Thank you.
Just have it.
Oh.
Trust me, there was nothing meant by that. That's just habit.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Zaz.
I'll keep the theme, Your Honor, I have nothing.
Oh, boy. Mr. Hicken, what do you got for me?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have, I'll pare it down a little bit because, looking at the clock, but I wanna talk, about a couple things. I did sign a use permit for a day of prayer at the Pascal. It's gonna be this Saturday. It'll be in the village. They're gonna mark, it'll be totally outside, so there will be no COVID stuff. I did on the application say that they would have to maintain whatever distancing the health department was currently, telling people was the proper one. So look for that happening Saturday. Also, next week, we continue to prep for the restoration of properties on Main Street. It's been a little bit coming for those of us that follow it. But this would be one of the last stages of fixing up those properties that were damaged. And we anticipated that for burying the electric on Main Street. And that would finish up, right now we're tentatively shooting for June 25th and 26th. Tonight is a resolution 2020-044. I didn't really brief people much on it. I will say that it's one of the things that has to happen for us to access COVID funds from, I want to call it Senate House Bill 310. It's kind of a housekeeping thing, but I know we can't access the money. And thanks to Mr. Barstow and Mr. Zetz, who both at least weighed in, and ultimately Jamie and I had already been talking about it, but the expertise and the reminder was much appreciated there. Finally, actually, I think that's good enough. I was going to talk a little bit about
what Ms. Klima said, but I think it spoke for itself and everybody can have that, so.
Anything for Tim?
I
Yes.
just have one thing, Mayor. I just wanted to publicly thank Tim. I had a waste issue of not being picked up in my ward. By the time I even answered back, Tim already resolved it, so I want to thank you for taking care of that in such a timely manner, so thank you.
Very good. Anything else for Tim? He should be on the review board then, right? Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mayor. You have my report, a couple things, update on income tax collections. As you know, I had done an analysis with the May collections and the first of June settlement, and looking at that as the rest of the year. We received the second half of June, I put it in. It still looks to be right around $1.4 million, no major trend up or down. Again, that's 2 data points. What I'm really looking forward to is getting that third data point, because for the people who got their year-end income tax, normally would have paid it on April 15th, filed and paid on April 15th, they got deferred out to July 15th. So the April through July, kind of, once I get through that point, that variation disappears, it washes out. So whether you paid in April, whether you paid in July, it's still coming in that same period. So I'm hoping that third data point gives me a little better thing, but for now it still looks like about $1.4 million. And when you run those numbers, the biggest concern I had was that the debt service fund has to be, the money comes off the top first to cover the debt service requirements. And we were going to be about $150,000, $170,000 shy at the end of the year, which means a negative fund balance, which I can't have. So on the agenda tonight is an ordinance for a first reading. We're asking to waive second and third readings, reallocating 3.5% from police and street to the debt service fund. And it's in the proportion of currently the police get 55 and the streets get 30.85%. So it's in that same relationship that we split the 3.5. So that's on the agenda for tonight. I issued today the 2021 through 2025 capital improvement program instructions, schedule, all the documents to all the directors. So they're gonna start working on the plan. In the instructions, unfortunately, we don't know what 21 is gonna look like with carryover fund balance and how the recovery is gonna look. Is it gonna bounce back quickly? Is it gonna go up and down? We don't know. So the focus for this coming capital program will truly probably be more 22 through 25, although we'll work with 21 as best we can. But clearly, without knowing where we're going to end the year and how much carryover balance we're going to have, it's going to have to be a little bit flexible. What I have told the department heads is that if we get to closer to the end of the year, and not the end of the year, the late summer, right before we present council with the budget, if revenues look like they're going to start coming back, it looks like we're going to, end up with some resources. We may scoot things back from 22 into 21, so we can continue forward. But just understand that the 21 capital is probably going to look a little different than in terms of scope and everything else than what you've seen in years past. I have a supplemental appropriation ordinance on for first reading, 3 readings on that. Big piece of that is just the impact of collective bargaining agreements as compared to what we budgeted, and some other items related to legal settlements. I'm trying to remember what else was in there. I think that's it primarily for now. My expectation is that we won't be modifying that. It'll go through for all 3 readings and be done with that. Tim mentioned about the CARES Act. We've struggled to file with the Grant Ohio Office of Budget and Management. They apparently had like 2 people responsible for approving all like 2,000 or 3,000 grant applications that were all due by July 15th or June 15th rather. So they're going nuts, and they've extended the deadline. Fortunately, to June 30th. We've struggled because we're trying to get the federal government to recognize our registration, and you cannot push the federal government any faster than it will go. So we're waiting to get that finalized so that we can be registered with the state. But we're not alone. Everyone's having the same issues. So, and that's all I have for my report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Jamie? Very good. Thank you, sir. Chris?
Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted a brief update on outside of the report. Since we last met, we've had 5 additional service line leaks. All 5 were holes in copper service lines. So that is 5 more examples why we require plastic lines for all new builds. They were all done live, basically. Didn't have to shut anybody off, but had 5 more of them. We did receive 8 submittals for the Jefferson Street water line design RFP. We're going through our internal review, hoping to have it narrowed down to a selected firm by the end of the week, early next week at the latest. Beechwood Trails 1 tower on the tower maintenance program that we just enacted this year. It's the first tower to get painted. We are in a unique situation during the summer months. We have 2 towers up there, so we're able to take a tower offline, use its sister tower. A lot of municipalities are not like that, so we got moved way up on the schedule to paint Beechwood Trails. They're coming out this Thursday to start setting up, and they anticipate 7 to 10 days for the entire project. This one is not the blast down, this is the overcoat. So they'll do some touch-up work, and then they'll do the overcoat job. So that just came through today, so I'm really excited to get that going, see some benefits come out of that tower maintenance program. And the last thing I want to talk about is the big one, turnoffs. As you remember, March 15th, the city voluntarily decided not to issue penalties for conduct turnoffs. March 31st, the EPA issued an order banning it across the state. We just got a letter last Friday from the director of the EPA, July 10th. That order will be rescinded, and so the state can go back to applying late fees, penalties, and conducting turnoffs. As a department, we've decided to give them one more billing cycle, our customers one more billing cycle before that happens. So we won't be doing any of that until August 15th as our deadline for that. So at August 15th, if you have not paid your account in full or established a payment plan with the department, you will be on the list for turnoffs for non-payment. So we'll go back to basically going back to billing normal billing procedures. We put a notice out on the website and on Facebook today. There is a letter that's going into every bill that goes out to all of our customers with the next cycle, and we've contacted directly Stephanie Tallman, the billing manager, is contacting the 3 largest landlords that we have in the area. It really affects them quite a bit going through this process. So we put out as much notice as we can. We've tried to be as lenient as we can going through this tough time, but we are bringing turnoffs back August 15th. Outside of that, I don't have anything. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Chris? As the keeper of the building, where are we at with the AC at the Old Town Hall?
The AC project is still approved in theory. We have to, the state is waiting to release their funds. So there's nothing we can do until the state budget goes through and the state decides if they're going to release the grant money that we're going to use for the air conditioner. The project itself is approved and ready to go. Once it's funded, we can move forward. There have been conversations back and forth to where it could happen soon or it could be kicked out until next year. And there's really, we have to wait on the state to make their decision on when they're going to fund it or not.
When they're going to
When,
fund
not
it.
if,
Okay.
but when.
All
Yes.
right.
Yes.
That's good enough for me. Thanks. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Alan?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have 3 things tonight. First one is Resolution 2020-043. That's for a 60-inch culvert on Cable Road. It was discovered to be at the end of its useful life after some of the flooding that we had here recently. That will be with Spenco working together on that project. Next is the streets program started up. We've replaced the curb on Pat Haven Drive today. Mill Street curb will follow, and the asphalt work is supposed to be either towards the end of the month or at the beginning of July. And then finally, the guardrail along Broad Street where the dirt was placed. Had a number of questions on that. That is part of the ODOT project for replacing the guardrail M-types. Currently have the kind that dives into the ground, which can evidently send cars flying. So they'll be replacing those with the attenuator type. pipes that crush. I talked to ODOT today, they were actually a little bit frustrated with their contractor as well, that they did that and then left for 2 weeks. They are supposed to be back tomorrow. I got that information late today, so we'll either get public notice out yet today or in the morning that there will be some lane closures and slight delays on Broad Street for the remainder of the week. Other than that, happy to answer any questions.
What's the outcome going to be if they're not going to catapult cars? What's the dirt? What's it gonna do?
They needed to do some grading for the different type of end type. So there will be fine graded and seeded and strawed when they're done.
Thank you. Anything for Alan?
Mayor.
Yes.
Alan, the ruts and different things that were left over the spring from the fiber optics being installed out there on Taylor and some other areas, have you gone back out there? Are you satisfied with their repairs? Is there anything more that we need to do to encourage them to make sure the drainage is working and make sure that we still don't have ruts?
So there were two different projects there. One was all along Broad from the western boundary line to Summit. They have done very well, in my opinion, on the restoration there. The other one ran up Taylor and Dixon Road. I've looked at that. I did not see any issues. If you have some issues, I'd be happy to know about that.
Okay.
That company has another project that I'm actually reviewing right now for another fiber line. So we definitely have some leverage with them if we see any issues.
Cool, thanks.
And for the next one, we'll also have a bond as well.
I was just gonna say, when I was walking the trail just a few weeks back, with my kids and picking up trash, there was some areas on the west side, like on the sidewalk area, that still had quite a bit of ruts.
Okay.
And it looks like where they were putting in the fiber optic, I don't know, there's some stuff sticking out of the ground that you couldn't pull out. I don't know if it was like wire and it got turned up in there and then it dried, or, I'll take a look in the next day or two and let you know the exact spots.
That'd be great.
Cause
Thank you.
they were like wires sticking up and we tried to pull them out and couldn't get it, so.
Interesting. Okay, I'm wondering if
There's
that was part of
some-
something else or if that was part of the fiber project. 'Cause
I'm not
usually-
sure, it was, and it looks like it might have been stuff left along the side of the road, from that exactly, I don't know.
Okay.
But that it was definitely mixed up in the mud and stuff, and then when it dried, it's just not budging.
Okay, yeah, if you can let me know and I'll definitely take a look and get
But
that.
there are some ruts and stuff, mainly on that side.
Okay.
Mr. Epperson?
I just want to publicly thank your department for some issues we had with some stop sign visibility and with some street sign conditions. They were handled promptly, and it looks great, so I just want to thank you publicly.
Great, thank you.
Alan, I don't know what utility company that had parked their trailer out here for a couple of days with the big spool on it,
Yes.
but they'd actually made, there's two, instead of ruts, I mean, it wasn't ruts, but it was imprints in they backed the truck in and hooked the trailer up and pulled it out, and I'm sure the landscapers aren't happy, but you might wanna.
Is this out east of Watkins Road?
No, it's right in front of our building right here.
Right front,
And,
okay.
and in my neighborhood.
That company actually didn't have a right-of-way permit. I've had a couple issues with them, still trying to work through those, so thank you for letting me know about those.
Thank you.
Yeah, plus, just so the chief would know, that company set up, stopped their truck right in the middle of Broad Street. I don't know if you saw that or not, Bruce, it was right out, right in front of us. And they had no signs and I happened to be coming home and there was a semi coming the other way on Broad, and I turned right in front of him, so he would have, I don't know what he would have done, he would have run over me. They just kind of set up shop where they feel like, I don't know who they are, maybe you two can share that information and kind of keep an eye on them if they come back.
And if you happen to see that in the future, please let me know. All the right-of-way permits are supposed to have maintenance of traffic, and that's supposed to be taken care of. So
Yeah,
if you see those issues,
it was on a Sunday, I think.
Yeah, I don't know who AEP subbed out and a lot of places around here needed the new poles. I mean, there was a lot of new telephone poles that went up,
Yes.
but the timing and their traffic control was terrible.
Yeah,
It was
Yeah,
dangerous.
this wasn't poles, this was the cable guys, they had that giant spool out there right by our sidewalk. And then
I just think they were loading it back on their truck or something. They just stopped right in the middle of Broad Street and did their thing. Yeah,
Go get them, Alan.
yeah.
Lanier?
Thank you, Mayor. A few things. You guys got my email today in regards to the pool update. Today we did start our assistant managers and one lifeguard, and I am very confident that we did, after our hiring process, we did hire some, I guess, managers who I feel confident will be able to co-manage the pool this year, and I'm open to any questions based on the document that was sent out today. Next thing on my list is the car park garden improvements. Just to give you a reminder, we did receive a grant from the Licking County Soil and Water District for $750 for our, I guess, native pollinator garden type of a project. We have installed about $200 worth of native plants. The last thing on the list is to plant the 25 trees that were donated to us from the county soil department. We did, if you haven't been back there, we did resurfacing on the playground. We put new border in. We're in the final touches at this time, and hopefully that'll all be complete next week. And big thanks to the Rotary Club for coming in and helping us do some of the mulching. And they also helped spread out last week the playground surfacing. So big thanks to them for helping us get their part, because that's a part that they actually own up to. So big thanks to the Rotary. The last thing I would like to update you on, at our last meeting, I discussed the, I guess, collaboration between the T.J. Evans Foundation and the County Parks District with the proposed plan for an asphalt path. Of course, that plan for the asphalt path has fallen through the cracks just because there would have been a large gap in funding. Tomorrow, I'll be going to the board in hopes that we can discuss reverting back to our original plan to just put the 8-foot aggregate base in and see if that is something that we can move forward with this year. I did have simple conversations with the County Parks District, and they are going to have their meeting this week and discuss, I guess, reverting back to figure out what they are actually able to do. But more to come, as we will discuss this tomorrow at our Parks Advisory Board meeting. And lastly, our parks maintenance is full-fledged. Big thanks to the Public Service Department for helping us out when we need some operating equipment, some large equipment. We did a lot of fence work last Friday at Freedom Park. We changed nearly 30 posts that have been installed probably when it was first put there. So we do have some fencing going up there. We have also removed a lot of fence in preparation for our July 13th start date for the Liberty Park project. So park maintenance is underway. We're getting caught back up from all the rain, and we're getting our parks back to where they need to be. And aside from that, I'm open to any questions.
Have you been to Mr. Hickens' house?
We fixed it up.
Okay, very good.
He has been seated and he is good to go.
Thank you for working with that Eagle Scout. I appreciate that. And I did have a call today. A young lady was concerned about the condition of Municipal Park baseball field. Since we're not using it, or is it, I know baseball fields tend to, you start getting grass.
There's a logic behind why it did not get in. It was in our plan to get improved this spring. But of course, COVID-19 hit us,
right.
And it was not necessarily on the priority list at that time.
Okay.
So we do know it's in shambles. So
we're just maintaining right now.
We're just maintaining it right now in hopes that we will be able to get that baseball field up to par as it required to work well before this year. So
no teams or schools or clubs that maintain that currently.
Lately, I've seen a lot of families using it for kickball, or they just take their kids out and just throw the ball in general. So it's merely just an area like such.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything for Lanier? All right. Thank you, sir. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Two quick things. Our third protest is just wrapping up. No reported incidents, so they've all been pleasant and uneventful. And I know I told you earlier that I wasn't going to be able to talk about the arrest we made today, but turns out they don't wish to cooperate, so we made a rather large arrest today. 3 individuals. We had a bunch of guns, over 100 pounds of marijuana, and super bulk amount of LSD from the city. And again, we made 3 arrests. It was a good day for the good guys.
Very good.
And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Chief, thanks for, have missed you, haven't seen you for a few weeks, but wanted to ask you, with all the other current events that are going on, especially riots and, or I should say protests that turn into riots, they really came to thought, we've been talking to people in the community, what kind of just asking the question, what kind of training are we doing? Are we doing anything different now compared to what we may have done last year as far as de-escalation of situations? I know we have a lot of new officers on the force, and I wanted to see, what we may be doing extra at this point in time to try to make sure that they're all prepared for a situation that may happen to them. We have no idea when and where it might happen, but it certainly could happen here in Pataskala.
Sure. Yeah, we do a lot of in-house training. That we have a couple officers that are trained to do unarmed tactics, handcuffing, ASP, taser, all those things that we do in-house, so we can actually work on them when we have free time on shifts. The de-escalation stuff comes first in the academy now, and then we do work on that as well. We basically incorporate that into our unarmed tactics and things like that, and use of force escalation and things like that. So we work on all that stuff, and so yeah, we are training. Everybody's cognizant of the current environment, and we work hard. We talk about it a lot, and urge our guys to keep your heads and talk about things, and if you have questions, and that's what we do.
One specific question I have, obviously we have senior officers, we have new officers, junior officers, and the situation that occurred in Minneapolis was a senior officer and some junior officers. Do the junior officers feel that they have enough training to step in if something was going? I'm not taking sides either way. I'm just asking the question through our department. Do they feel they have enough training and enough ability to step in if they saw something that wasn't maybe in their opinion per their training?
I haven't spoken to all 4 of the newest officers, but I have with 2 of them. Again, the situation, it was horrible with Mr. Floyd. We play that video for our officers and ask them to critique it and what went wrong, and and even try and solicit, hey, what went right? And none of them said anything went right. They were smart enough to say, yeah, that's a horrible thing to do, and we're smarter than that. We would never do that.
Yeah, and I understand. It's a matter of seconds that things happen. I'm not, our police officers do a great job. So just asking if we're thinking ahead, the precautionary training. That's all.
Yeah, and we also do things like we work with the surrounding agencies. I know when we didn't know what to expect on our first protest, so we contacted Johnstown, Reynoldsburg, the sheriff's office. Their SWAT team was on standby because they were planning on sending a large group to Columbus to help them out, and instead they sent half, and half of them were on standby for us. So we're 22 guys, so we have to make the best of it, and to do that sometimes you just agencies cooperate, and you help them and they help you.
Great, thanks.
Are we still assisting Columbus when needed?
No, that lasted just a couple of days, and once the governor or the mayor, I'm sorry, lifted their curfew, there was no more need for that.
Anything else for Bruce? Yes, ma'am.
2 things, Chief. The first is thank you. We sat down today and just chatted about a couple of things, and I said to him that as a council person who's been here for over 6 years, I was maybe a little ashamed that I wasn't able to answer specific questions about our policies and practices in our police department, and that's largely in part to we've not had to worry about it. We have a fantastic police department with officers who have, for the most part, always responded. I've seen them in several instances, and I like it most when I see them and they don't know who I am. That happens at the school every now and then. So you get to really see how they interact with our kids, the public in general. So because of how you run your department, I've not had to answer those hard questions. And for that, I'm very appreciative. But you know, in my own due diligence, you know, wanted to ask you some of those things, and as always, how you sit down and approach it, and with zero defensiveness or offense taken when those questions are asked is fantastic. And you know, obviously, we've both had personal experiences with our own children that make you look at events in a different light, and so that's, you know, it's something that's really important. So I appreciate you, and really appreciate the efforts you take to make sure that we keep that relationship with our public. And then the second thing, not quite so serious, is there's some little jerks using the trail to four-wheel on Taylor Road. So if you could just keep your eye out, you know, if they're happen to go down Taylor, it's happening more now that, you know, school's out in quarantine, lifted a little bit. But yeah, and they like to shoot right across those, you know, cross where you're supposed to turn into your driveway and your whatever. So beat my horn at a few of them. Next time I might follow one home, but I might have to call you first. So, but if you could just have them keep an eye out, I would appreciate that.
Well, thank you for your kind words, and we'll do.
Anything else for Bruce? Okay, Speaker of the House, Scott Fulton.
Well, there's a pay raise.
Now I'm gonna gavel. One thing I did want to mention is ordinance 2019-4341. That's the Scenic View Estate project. I think it was 2 weeks ago now. I reviewed their most recent submittal to us, provided them comments. It was about 7 pages. I spoke with them last week twice, and then again today. So they're in the process of moving through and making corrections based upon my comments and Chris's and Alan's. Once I get those back, I'm going to review them again, and we're not going to bring it back until all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So once we have that perfect, we'll bring it back for consideration from council.
It's like a Groundhog Day ordinance, isn't it?
I wouldn't disagree.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Anything for Scott? Yes, sir.
Scott, a quick question. The new mechanic shop that's down the street here on Broad Street, Parsons, I think it's called.
Yes.
Did they have to go back through a conditional use application?
Yes, they did.
And were they successful with that?
Yes.
They have they met their? I assume they probably had a similar or similar conditional use as the previous car mechanic shop.
Yes. What we did is went through because there was Fellowship Auto, one before that, and then this current one. The original one, when I came on board with the city, had several conditions. We went through, compiled all the old conditions, all the ones from Fellowship Auto, went through to see what was completed and what was not, and those that were not were reassigned to this new application. So there are some they still need to work on. There was also the condition that got left off on the second round of Bell. All parking must be located in designated spaces. So that was added most recently.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So they're aware of the history and they know they need to.
That was all outlined in the staff report, yes.
Very good. Anything else for Alan or Scott? I mean. All right, thanks, folks. Committee chair reports. Mr. Epperson.
Okay. You want to go? Buildings and grounds. We had a meeting last week. We discussed a few things. Among the items, the Veterans Green. I believe Mr. Hicken expressed that there was some concern from some citizens of the condition. So we kind of talked about it a little bit. We also, Mr. Crawford was involved in the conversation, and we spoke to him about maybe having parks kind of just look after it a little bit and say, okay, hey, this needs done, this needs done. Maybe not do the work, but, give us a heads up, say, this is kind of something that, may need to be addressed. So, we also discussed making a list of things to check, for our next, Buildings and Grounds, meeting. We already had the AC update. Thank you, Mr. Sherrod, appreciate that. Mr. Lee also expressed maybe a letter, to the town hall, committee explaining kind of the situation, just that way they're up to date on what's going on. We had a discussion on mulching, the police department and this building. There's a church group, that is offered to do the work on June 16th and 17th, but we were looking as to source of mulch. Was there any more from that, Mr. Hicken?
I did actually finally get in touch, and thank you, Ms. Hampshire, who's going to also contact them. I did get in touch with Ohio Mulch today. It looks like the short-term answer, and first of all, let me correct the date. It was my mistake, not yours. We need the mulch here by the 19th. The volunteers will be here on the 20th. You wrote what I said correctly. I was wrong. So back to the mulch. It looks like the mulch that in the past had been donated is not going to be donated, but maybe it will. Ms. Hampshire said she was going to contact them to see. The amount is incredibly minimal, so it's 600 bucks or something, and we have the free labor. And so if we have the free labor, for me, that's probably. Also, should we next year at this building be in a financial hit, if the two buildings get mulched this year, we might be able to forego them next year. So.
Thanks, sir. We also discussed sale of city-owned land, specifically in the Blanche Edition. There was a couple lots there that somebody may be interested in purchasing, but through that discussion, we also determined that Parks also may be interested in the property as well. So they're putting together, or have put together, submitted a plan for us to review at our next Buildings and Grounds, I believe. So we also are going to review the cities, what lanes we do have for sale, what surplus properties do we own, and what could be sold. So we're going to review that. The Eagle Scout project that was approved a couple months ago, there are some changes to it due to the Liberty Park project. So the Gaga pit that was going to be put at Liberty is being moved to Foundation Park near the playground. And the table with the built-in game on the table is being moved from Liberty to Carr. And then the final thing was the entry signs to the city. We believe there's 4. East, West, Broad, North and South, 310. There's a discussion about maintenance and upkeep of those. We are looking for, we consider sponsors. Mr. Lee's family offered to sponsor one. And we believe there's a couple others that may sponsor either doing the work, or we also discussed a contractor getting us a price on what it would cost to mulch, paint, general upkeep of the signs and the beds around the signs. And then maybe the sponsors can cover that cost for that specific sign. So that's all I have from the Buildings and Grounds. Anything, Mr. Lee?
No.
Mr. Goose? Mr. Hicken?
Well done. Nice
Any questions?
Questions? Mr. Lee?
I'm going to sum up Development Committee here very briefly because it's 9 o'clock and we're not even to legislation yet. So I'm going to rock this one. So Section 2 and 3 of the development or comprehensive plan, got 2 done, almost got 3 done. We've got a couple pages to wrap up next meeting and we'll dive into 4. We do not have the utility part back, so we can't really dive into 4 yet. So I'm leaving on vacation, so we'll get back into that when I get back and hopefully have.
I'm expecting them tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. So Mel and Andy, I'm looking at July 1st or 2nd probably before we can get back together. So I'll reach out. We'll do that outside of here. Tim and Scott as well. So that's it on the comprehensive plan. We're moving along on that as quick as we can. We had the Mr. Shank came in and talked to us about his project. I'm gonna just skip right over that, and we'll talk about that later tonight in executive session. So, very good discussion. You guys will hear all about that. The TIFs. Connie touched on that. We had a good discussion on that. Council already has the info. It's essentially up to council to have that discussion and decide what we want to do with it. Yes, there's a part of it that does involve the Sage Point, so I think we can have that discussion then. But I think that it was the general feeling of the committee, and Melanie, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, that we need to take a broader look at TIFs citywide, more holistically. But we don't have the time to do that right now because we're focused on the comprehensive plan. So we may want to just look at the one on Summit for Sage Point. That's council's decision. But the bigger picture, we want to come back and take a peek at it when we finish up the comp plan. So that's my report for tonight. If there's no questions, I'll pass it on to Todd or who else has one. He's gone.
Any other I know Todd's gonna have one. Any other committee chair reports? Any questions for Tommy? All right, well, we're gonna wait for Todd. You're up, sir.
We had a HR committee meeting tonight, and so we will, a couple things. We're going to distribute, for the 2019 evaluations, those will be done by the mayor, myself, Ms. Carter, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Walter. At least last I heard it, he'll tell me if he's chooses not to participate in that, but if he wants, I'll send him the evaluations. We're gonna do those for Mr. Nicholson and for Mr. Zetz. So those, we'll not do that for Mr. Hicken. So, even though we'd like to, we're not going to. So, anyway, so that was the decision. Then we'll be on, then I'm gonna distribute blank evaluation forms to our new council members so that they can see what that's like, so that for the 2020 evaluations, which we'll do in 21, they can see and be cognizant of what they're gonna be evaluating folks on. So, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's move on. Unfinished business. 4341 stays on the table. Ordinance 2019-4354 for a fifth reading. Moved by Mrs. Carter, seconded by Mr. Epperson. Kathy, when you're ready, fifth reading. Don't say that too long.
2019-4354, this is the fifth reading. An ordinance to rezone property located at 6031 Summit Road Southwest, parcel number 063-141474-00.000, totaling 84.30 plus or minus acres in the city of Pataskla from medium low density residential R87 zoning classification to planned development district PDD zoning classification.
Discussion. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you know, as Tommy had mentioned in our development meeting, we did have a discussion about TIFs in this area. We've heard from a lot of residents regarding the condition of Summit Road, the current condition of Summit Road and the current usage of Summit Road and how difficult it is to get in and out from their whatever, either their subdivision or their home driveways. It's hard to know exactly what they're describing, but as far as I can understand, it's a very difficult in the morning and in the afternoon when school is in session. Additionally, you know, the road, we've talked about this road over and over and over again about how it is in a condition. It was a township road. It's got deep ditches on either side, and it's narrow, and it's dangerous in general. And that's not going to change via our funding abilities or any others at this point in time until we start to think about potentially doing something different. And I think that one of the items that came up or came very clear to me during the development meeting was this idea of a TIF. Whether it's this property only with a TIF or numerous properties with a TIF. I think I brought up in the meeting that a new school, that's an attraction for developments. We know that this area is going to grow. There are several 100,000 people projected to move to the Columbus area. There is no reason why the western edge of Licking County would not experience great growth. If we don't have development on Summit Road, it'll develop north and south of it, and we'll still have the increased traffic with still the substandard road. So I personally would like to see us evaluate the ideas of TIFs, whether they're, this one's not a large TIF or wouldn't be a large amount of money, but it is something that can fund bonding for improvements that are needed that we can't fund ourselves. And it also captures, if we can get something as a corridor through here, captures the future development to actually pay for the road that needs to be improved today rather than waiting for it to be improved tomorrow. So that's my opinion. I'd like to certainly evaluate the idea of the TIFs in this area, as well as maybe even a commercial TIF at the corner of Broad and Summit.
Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say, for the record, and I mean, I've already made it pretty clear all along that I am not in favor of the development, the Sage Point development on Summit Road, for all the reasons that you guys have heard over and over, but the infrastructure and whatever it may be. I know that there's residents who are anxious to have this come to a resolution, so they don't have to worry about it anymore, but it would be irresponsible of me to not look at a bigger picture if there were more opportunities to fix things. The only thing that's held me back on a development of this size is Summit Road. The size of Summit, the intersections up and down Summit, Cleveland, all of that area, and how it impacts the residents who live there now. So I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I would have to see all the numbers and ask a lot of questions, but if there was a mechanism that would fund the correction of the issues on that road in a more timely manner than what we're trying to do through the Streets Committee, which we've been pretty, diligently working on, I would, need to do that. So I just wanted to put that out there that I feel like there needs to be some research done on that. Tommy said, in his report, maybe something holistically for the city, but obviously this is the thing that's on our plate right now that we need to resolve, so.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, and I think maybe the whole city discussion is later, but maybe we just look at Summit Road, that corridor, maybe from Summit to Morse, I don't know. But I don't know if that would be just as simple as us directing you to begin crunching those numbers with Jamie and report back to us, but I do think that, I think Mel said it perfect. It's only responsible for us to capture that if we can.
Well, it was interesting to hear Connie too say, obviously the Coglins want to be, from that whole stretch, if that could be improved, if there's a chance, we need to look at it, as you said, be irresponsible not to, so. Any other input?
I think just as a follow-up to my development committee report is we just need to hear the wishes of council. Maybe we just start with Summit Road, and that would be, and we'll look at the big picture later, unless something pops up.
Yes,
I would only add one comment to that it would have to be a substantial difference in the funding and in the time improvement is what would influence me, but I would like that research done, so.
And we could enact a TIF regardless of what happened in Sage Point.
That was gonna be my question.
Correct.
Cool.
Hang on a minute. You have some input, Mr. Administrator?
I just want to say that we certainly could enact a TIF, despite what happens with Sage Point. As you look at valuations, and Jamie should feel free to jump in here too, because we're both kind of wading through this at the same time. As you put the TIF on, it's very difficult to tell council what the dollar amounts are gonna be if you don't see the difference in the property from just land to built out. And we can guess, and we can provide that. The same is probably true for the commercial section. I would almost think of one happening at Broad and Summit, almost the way the 310 TIF happened, where there's a south and a north. I don't think it makes much sense to TIF anything between Broad Street or the railroad tracks, because there's no development that's gonna happen there, with the exception of the commercial pieces that I just mentioned. But then on the other side, Cleveland, north on the Summit corridor to Morris or Havens, so I think we can give you guys some idea. I'm in favor of that. I just don't know how it's gonna react with this body vis-a-vis it. So.
Well, it can't be retroactive, right? So it would have to, okay.
And Jamie's gonna talk too.
So, the difficulty is unless it's project specific, sorry, I'm kind of talking through the wall here. When you have a project that says this is the development that's gonna come in, this is the estimated assessed value, this is what the land is worth, you can calculate the differential and what the revenue would be TIF. Clearly, a commercial retail TIF spins off a lot more revenue more quickly, because you build an office building, you build a retail shop, whatever, it's all there day one, as soon as it's up and running. Whereas with residential, I did my analysis on this one as a hypothetical. It was a 5-year build out, so I just did spread out over 5 years. That timing, you can move it a little ways, but there's a ramping on it. So it starts off very low, takes about 5 years in this process to where you hit the full amount, and then you get about 10 years of that, and then there's a tail as the last ones fall off. Generally speaking, with the TIF, what you're looking to do is to cover debt service. The reality is you don't want to wait. It's like buying a house. You don't want to wait till you have all the money saved up so that you can pay cash for a project, because by the time you get the money, the costs have gone up. Not only that, but then your residents who live along the road are saying, hey, you said you'd fix my road, so you're going to want to issue debt, and the question is coverage of debt service. Again, it comes down to the project specifics. In my analysis, it depends whether a number of assumptions. Fire district is included or fire district is excluded from the TIF in terms of what it is. Now, these are all considered non-school TIFs, what we were looking at, which means the school gets their money. They're not part of the TIF, so they get whatever they would have gotten anyway. So there's no negotiations with the schools because they're getting what they're entitled to. It is difficult, however, once things are put into place. So if you build, the first 30 houses and the TIF goes in, you're not going to be able to capture the change in the value. So what you're doing is you're saying, if the value of the land is at $72,000 and you've added $200,000, now it's $270,000, you're TIF'd on the difference between the original value of the land. That doesn't get TIF, that stays the way it is. But once you build it, and if you put the TIF on, you can't capture that increase. The only time to capture it is before the construction. But again, the difficulty in projecting, and there are financial experts that will tell you based on an average retail, average commercial, average residential, what an acre would generate. But until you have a project in your hand, it's going to be hard to know.
Okay.
One last thing.
Sure.
Tim, in your discussions with Connie on this potential TIF or proposed TIF, she hasn't taken anything off the table, has she, as far as what, I think it was, I don't remember the exact number, it was
91,000.
1,000 or something, that they were paying for the intersection and
Nope,
then
nope.
the other improvements. So they're not eliminating anything.
And my understanding is that they haven't gone backwards, they just were thinking about other ways to possibly affect, Sage Point. And I think it was probably a little bit of what you said earlier, which is the road, the traffic on the road is not going to change. Whether it'll change a little bit with Sage Point, but it'll still have the same problems, and so they, that's how they set on it. I don't know, my reading, and of course, council will have to make this determination either tonight or at some point, about Sage Point. That notwithstanding, I absolutely agree that I think we should move forward with at least the investigations. So,
Mr. Lee?
never mind.
Okay, what's council's pleasure?
And Mr. Walters got
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to table,
Okay.
the ordinance 2019-4354.
Got a motion to table,
I'll second that.
seconded by Mr. Lee. Discussion and roll.
Barstow,
Nope.
Hampshire,
No.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Okay, motion to table passes. New business, ordinance 2020-4367 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2020-4367, this is the first reading, and ordinance amending ordinance 2019-4352, establishing the allocation of income tax collections received by the city of Pataskla pursuant to ordinance 2010-3959 and declaring an emergency.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move that we dispense with 3 readings of this ordinance as required by section 4.04 of the city charter and declare an emergency.
Got a motion to dispense,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Jamie, just on the issue of this being an emergency, I wanted to ask this earlier. You had said that at the end of the year, you might be short, you had said maybe 150,000, 135,000, whatever. Is this something that, I guess I'm just asking this for the emergency purposes, is this something we will start to be short tomorrow or within a month?
The issue is the percentages are set now, and the farther I get into the year, so if I wait later in the year, it may end up being, instead of 3% shift, it may be I have to take 15% from the police in the street at the end of the year. So it can become more severe at the end of the year in terms of percentages. This allows me to react a little earlier so that we keep an eye on it, making sure that we're positive.
That's what I want, thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I liken this to what your just previous analogy about saving for the money for the house, you pay cash, you keep saving, but the cost keeps going up. Remember, if we do 3 readings in the 30 days, it'll be August before this becomes effective. So that's a good question, Mr. Walter, but we want to keep an eye on this. We don't want this to get way out of whack.
And if I could, and as I put in my report, if we find that the revenues do turn the right way, and the fund balances end up having a surplus, that will allow me to reduce the percentage in 21 going to the debt service, because I won't need as much, because I'll have a larger carryover balance, which means more would go back to the police and streets.
And supplement the carryover in those two.
Yeah.
Got it, thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion to dispense? Kathy, roll please.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Motion passes. Back to the original ordinance. Go ahead,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor, I move we adopt ordinance 2020-4367.
Got a motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion? And roll.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Ordinance 2020-4368 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Kathy, when you're ready.
ordinance 2020-4368, this is the first reading. An ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020.
Discussion? And roll. I'm sorry, that's just the first reading. Thank you. Resolutions, 2020-043, resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with Spenco Excavating to replace a 60-inch culvert under Cable Road.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Walter. Discussion and roll.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2020-044, resolution authorizing and directing the city, or directing the finance director or his designee to register for coronavirus relief funds through the Office of Budget and Management, requesting the city of Pataskala receive its share of the county coronavirus relief distribution fund and confirming the funds will be expended only to cover costs consistent with the requirements of Section 5001 of the CARES Act.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Epperson. Discussion and roll.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Resolution passes. On to motions. Motion to approve, I need a motion to approve the City of Pataskala, Ohio 2021 budget schedule.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion? Everybody's looked at the sheet? Okay, very good. Kathy, when you're ready?
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Motion passes. Anybody in the wings?
No, sir.
Very good. So no additional citizens' comments tonight. 10A, Mr. Barstow.
Mr. Mayor, I move we go into executive session pursuant to revised code section 121.22G8 to discuss information which is directly related to a request for economic development assistance that is to be provided or administered under revised code sections 3737.67 to 3735.70, and wherein council believes it is necessary to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project. Invited into this executive session are Brian Zetz, Law Director, Scott Fulton, Planning and Zoning Director, and Jamie Nicholson, Finance Director.
Got a motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion? And roll.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Executive session at 9:27. And thank you, staff, for your patience tonight. Director, everybody, thank you. Wow, that's a long time to sit.
Why do I feel like I'm more than
It's called a big like,
why do I feel like I like twice. Yes, I do. Very much know what that's for. Hey.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't gonna correct them on that, I was like, yeah, just let him read that number, it's no big deal.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I think I know what,
Yeah.
so I have a good idea of what the committee was,
Unless you gotta Google it.
which was,
Right.
tip your toe,
That's the- that's
do
the
some
leader.
do some
No,
checking. And it's just
because of the water and sewer.
Yep. Yeah, well, you look at it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff happening, like a billion, some townships and stuff. Never going through.
Right, oh, I know.
You know, full-blown, and they're still able to, so this guy, this is one of those where you go in and they just check like the internal checks. That's what it's called, an internal check.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all it was. I don't think it needs to be.
I know, I was thinking
Yeah,
that.
well, I don't, we have other things we can spend money on. No doubt about that.
No, yeah, I'll try to respond to
That is hilarious. Well, hey, nobody was when we had this audit board, we got out here.
I talked about why, I'm glad to do it.
I start between 6:30 and 7 and go until.
Throw a little punch too.
Right. So, but it's.
Motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire.
Yes.
Out of executive session, 9:59. We'll go around the room. Mr. Epperson? Okay. Nice to see you at the farmer's market, sir.
Yes.
Did you spend like
My family
$30 or
enjoys it.
$40 at the shaving, ice shaving thing?
We spent quite a bit of money on
Yeah.
snacks.
Yeah, very good. Mrs. Carter?
I have nothing tonight, sir.
Okay, Mr. Barstow?
Nothing.
Sir, I really like the khakis and the purple shirt. I'm impressed.
Okay.
Mr. Gaelic, what do you got?
Nothing, Mayor.
Mr. Zetz?
Nothing.
Mr. Walther?
Yeah, I want to say that I really appreciate Chief Brooks' attention to the details, you know, his announcement, or not even an announcement, that, you know, I guess I'll just say in general, the feeling of being safe in Pataskla is a valuable feeling, and Chief and his department do a great job, work hard to keep us that way.
We've taken every protest seriously, whether there's one person or 40 persons.
Exactly.
So, yes, we're keeping an eye on it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jude?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Lee?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Discussion and roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Let me know
That's some good stuff out of there.
Not,
10 o'clock,
not
baby.
since I've been here.
We pulled it
Not
out,
since
10
I've been
o'clock.
here.
Okay, Kathy, I'm going over here and putting it right
Before
back.
they need to read it.
Hey.
And just,
Yeah, noon's probably best.
and I'm trying not to keep it dated.
All right, that's fine.
Mel, will you text me